That was a premise that prompted a packed house in Northwest Houston this evening. Fox 26's Ned Hibbert live with this story. Ned?
There was more than one drill here, drill now bumper sticker in this parking lot as the King Street Patriots took up a topic that's hitting home on Main Street.
You asked the question, is a moratorium just beginning? And the answer is yes.
Congressman Kevin Brady had the floor, but someone else brought fuel for the fire. Bruce Vincent, chairman of the Independent Petroleum Association of America, says the moratorium is a nuisance for big oil, but it's a knockout punch for smaller energy companies.
And what happens is they lay those people off. The economic benefit that accrues from that ripples through the economy doesn't happen. And so whether it's a local hamburger stand, the local laundry, they get impacted as well.
Or, closer to the epicenter, Triple S Steel, doing business in Houston's 5th Ward for half a century.
It's not going to put us out of business, but it is certainly painful, and it's just unfair.
So unfair to Gary Stein, whose father started the company. He put his money where his mind is, paying $200 a pop for signs that say, President Obama, lift the drilling ban now. You are killing our jobs.
And you see it on every one of our plants, you know, in our other locations.
8 locations in 5 states, selling 500,000 tons of steel a year, providing jobs for 550 people. The deepwater drilling moratorium was to provide breathing room after a disastrous spill soiled much of the Gulf. But it has encountered setbacks in the courts, not to mention the court of public opinion, especially in a town where energy still pays a lot of the light bills.
It's hurting people on the ground here, regular working people in Houston and Texas, and Louisiana and Mississippi.
All of them touched by the oil spill, but economically tied to the oil business. We're live in Northwest Houston. I'm Ned Hibbert, Fox 26 News.
Ned, thank you. And more talk about drilling moratoriums in other parts of the world. BP is planning a well off the coast of Libya that's 650 feet deeper than the Deepwater horizon. Now, Italy is leading the charge to stop deepwater drilling anywhere in the Mediterranean. And the Energy Commissioner of the European Union wants deepwater drilling banned in all European waters. Let's pose that question right now to U.S. Representative Kevin Brady. So, Congressman, is it worth keeping the moratorium, even if it hurts Houston's economy?
Well, no, absolutely not. The moratorium is turning an environmental disaster into an economic disaster. We're going to see literally tens of thousands of jobs lost here in our region. A lot of small, mid-sized businesses may not make it through this 6 months. And at the end of the day, the Gulf is not going to be any safer as a result of it. So it is time for the president to lift the moratorium.
There are, of course, 2 sides to this issue, and some believe the moratorium is definitely needed.
Ellis Pickett is a spokesman for the Texas Upper Coast chapter of the Surfrider Foundation. That's a nonprofit environmental organization dedicated to the protection of the Gulf and its beaches. So, Mr. Pickett, question for you. Why should we keep the moratorium?
Well, you know, the moratorium is painful, but it's a necessary safety measure. We don't know what caused that disaster. Then, just like any other thing, like NASA, they shut down the shuttle program when we had the Columbia disaster. Everything from amusement park rides to the space shuttle to military aircraft are grounded when there's a problem, a disaster that we don't understand. We have got to determine what caused this problem and make sure that we don't repeat it. Drilling in 5,000 feet of water is a dangerous proposition, and this disaster certainly proved it.
Mr. Pickett, it appears that BP has capped this oil rig. Does that make it okay now to lift the moratorium?
No, sir. We still don't understand the problem. We don't understand the process. We don't know whether it was the blowout preventers or whether it was the cement job or whether it was just a mistake in the well planning or the personnel in charge of the rig out there. Until we know that, we really can't turn loose and start producing or drilling more wells in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, well, we do have one upside is the fact that we have the world's oil spill response here. So if we drill, we at least are ready this time.
Congressman, what do you have to say about the safety issues that are being brought up right now?
Yeah, 50,000 wells have been drilled in the Gulf safely, 1,000 of them deeper than the Macondo well. If you drill with the best practices of the industry and the best technology, you do it safely, which is exactly what the industry does. keeping these workers from working, sending these rigs offshore, killing small businesses. It doesn't need to happen. These are innocent bystanders. Their jobs, their livelihood shouldn't be threatened because the president's decision to impose a moratorium, the courts have already struck down.
Mr. Pickett, don't you have numbers that say there are now more oil rigs operating than there were in the past?
Yes, sir. Actually, we need to look at the big picture. There are about 242 drilling rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. Most of them are out of service for one reason or another. A lot of them are too old to operate and cannot be refurbished, but they're still out there. But actually, today, there are 82 drilling rigs in the Gulf of Mexico and 50 are drilling. A year ago, there were 76 rigs in the Gulf of Mexico and 44 drilling. So we have more offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico today than we did a year ago.
Well, Mr. Pickett, talking again about big picture, the losses you say are temporary, but there could be long-term effects throughout the Houston region because of what's going on right now. Do you think the environmental concerns should really trump that?
Well, of course the environmental concerns should be the priority. Safe drilling practices and the environmental concerns. We don't know what all is out there in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, they came up with a number of 172 million gallons, the government task force did today, of oil out in the Gulf of Mexico. We also know that there were nearly 2 million gallons of dispersants that were injected directly into the oil. We don't know what in the world is going to happen with those dispersants, how long their life is, how they will affect the marine life out there. And there are just too many things, too many unknowns here for us to jump in and start drilling immediately.
Congressman Brady, you say that the moratorium should be lifted, the drilling should continue with safe, reasonable practices, but wasn't it believed that BP was doing that, and as it turns out, investigations have showed that perhaps they were not as careful as they should have been?
Well, it certainly looks like best practices weren't followed, but it drives home a point. The government regulated these rigs to begin with, and it certainly didn't stop that spill. What makes the Gulf safe is best practices and technology and innovation. That's what's occurring, and the truth of the matter is that unless we get these rigs back to work, we won't be any safer, science won't be any better, and the jobs and livelihood will be lost. So it isn't an either-or. I really think the agenda in Washington, unfortunately, is an attack on oil and natural gas that has very little to do with science.
Well, what if there was another oil spill, heaven forbid? What would happen then?
You know, one, I don't believe that's going to happen, just as it hasn't happened for 40 years. But I think the industry now has new techniques, new capability it didn't have before. And as inspectors who are on those deep water rigs within 10 days showed, these wells, these drilling rigs are ready to go safely. Let's put them back to work.
All right, Congressman Brady and Mr. Pickett, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.